What does nitrous oxide do? Well, despite what Vin Diesel would have you believe, it doesn't burst into fiery explosions from gunshots or cigarette lighters or physics-defying car crashes, and it doesn't magically turn your car into the Millennium Falcon jumping into hyperspace. In fact, despite popular belief, nitrous oxide isn't flammable or explosive at all. It's composed of nitrogen, which is an inert gas, and oxygen, which is oxygen. In fact, if you held a candle in front of a bottle of nitrous oxide and cracked it open, it'd blow your candle out, which quite possibly could be the coolest way to blow out your birthday candles. So why do they use the laughing gas to make cars go fast? Well, nitrous oxide is basically a turbo in a bottle. There's only two things that can make a motor make more power, baby. It's more air, or oxygen specifically, and more fuel. Now, fuel is never really the limiter. It's easy to pump more fuel into a motor. But if you don't have the oxygen to burn it, the sparks ain't gonna ignite, and you're not gonna have any afternoon delight. So then you're just pumping raw fuel out of your exhaust. You know those douche canoes and diesel trucks that look like a scared squid everywhere they go because they think blowing black smoke on Jan's Prius is a good substitute for developing a personality? That's what they're doing. They're just shoving more fuel into their motor than they've got air to burn, and all of that black smoke is a mixture of partially burnt fuel and fragile masculinity. But if you're not Stuart and your whole goal isn't to just run around getting people to look what I can do when it isn't really that impressive, and you're actually interested in making more horsepower, you're gonna need to treat that motor like it's a grandmother in a Southern Baptist church on Sunday in the summer who just found out her son was gay and give it some air. The oldest and most tried and true method, as the old saying goes, is there's no replacement for displacement. You can tear the motor apart, bore the cylinders out, put bigger pistons in it. The bigger the hole, the more it can suck. But it turns out there is a replacement for displacement, and that comes in the form of turbochargers and superchargers that take outside air and shove it down the motor's throat, which just fits more air in the same space, more air, more fuel, more bang. But you can also replace displacement with nitrous oxide. And it does that in two ways. First, nitrous oxide is 36% oxygen, which is about 15% more oxygen than just regular air. And at around 565 degrees Fahrenheit, the nitrogen and the oxygen molecules get a divorce, freeing up those oxygen to go screw around with your fuel. That means you can add more fuel, get more power. But also, when nitrous is released from the bottle, it comes out at negative 129 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a bit brisk. And if you remember from your physics classes, cold air is dense air. So by cooling down that intake air, you make it denser, which means you can fit more air into the motor as well. But obviously, this is a compressed gas in a bottle, so you only have a limited amount you can use, whereas turbo superchargers and or increased displacement give you power all of the time. But a bottle of nitrous and some nozzles is a lot less expensive and a lot less work than boring out cylinders or bolting on blowers. Now, the last question you may have is, if the goal is more oxygen, why don't they just use a bottle of pure compressed oxygen? And the answer is, well, jet fuel might not be able to melt steel beams. Gasoline sure as shit can, given the right conditions. If you've ever seen anybody use a propane or acetylene torch to cut through steel, they're able to do that because that torch uses a bottle of pure oxygen to get the fuel hot enough to melt steel. Now, the nitrogen and air and the nitrogen and nitrous oxide is an inert gas that actually helps cool the temperatures of a combustion reaction. And without that, the pure oxygen would allow your gasoline to burn hot enough to turn parts of your motor that are supposed to be solids into liquids, and then it would stop doing motor things. So that's all nitrous oxide is. It's just O'Hare air in a bottle for your car.